Before you hear a single word of analysis, I want you to test yourself first. Grab a pen, a piece of paper, or just count silently in your head. You're going to answer 10 questions with a simple yes or no. Keep a running tally. Don't overthink it, your gut reaction is the data point. Ready? Here we go. 1. Do you get lit up by new ideas instantly, but lose all patience the moment something becomes repetitive or routine? 2. When you fail, is your first instinct to scan for an external cause, bad luck, bad timing, someone else's mistake, before you ever look inward? 3. When you're hurt, do you go quiet instead of saying it out loud, secretly hoping the other person will just figure it out? 4. Does honest feedback hit you like an attack, even when it's delivered gently? 5. When tension rises in a relationship, do you go cold and distant rather than have the direct conversation? 6. Would you rather delay a project indefinitely than risk finishing it imperfectly? 7. Do you feel a low-grade sense of being trapped by anything that smells like a long-term commitment? 8. Do you quietly believe you're built for something bigger, which makes ordinary, stable routines feel almost beneath you? 9. Do you find yourself reaching for old wounds as the explanation for why you can't handle a responsibility today? 10. Does life feel like a waiting room, like you're on pause until some perfect turning point arrives, instead of actually living now? Count your yes. Say the number out loud if you're brave enough. Drop it in the comments. I'll go first. I caught myself on 4 of these, and I'm willing to bet most people watching will land somewhere between 3 and 7. If you scored 4 or higher, on yourself, or on someone you love, welcome to a psychological territory that has a name, a structure, and, more importantly, a way out. Stick around, because today we're taking that territory apart piece by piece. Here's an uncomfortable fact: biological age and emotional age are not the same clock, and they don't always run at the same speed. You've met this person. Mid-30s, sharp, well-educated, put together on paper, and the second real difficulty shows up, something in them reverts. The reaction is disproportionate. Childlike, almost. Meanwhile their peers seem to just handle it. Adapt. Move forward. Sometimes that person is a coworker, a partner, a parent. Sometimes, if we're honest with ourselves for 30 uncomfortable seconds, that person is us, at least on our worst days. This isn't a character flaw and it isn't a moral failing. It's a psychological structure, and structures can be studied, understood, and rebuilt. That's what we're doing today. No judgment, just a map, so you know exactly where you or someone you care about might be stuck, and exactly what it takes to get moving again. The easy move here is to call this behavior lazy, selfish, or just their personality. Society does this constantly. But developmental psychology offers a much more useful lens. Carl Jung described something he called the puer aeternus, Latin for eternal child or eternal youth. It refers to a person who has physically aged into adulthood while their emotional world stays frozen somewhere around adolescence. They resist the weight of real life. They avoid binding commitments. They cling, unconsciously, to a childlike sense of limitless freedom. This isn't a decision anyone makes on purpose. Nobody wakes up and chooses to stay emotionally 16. It's an unconscious defense, the mind's way of protecting itself from a version of growing up that feels unbearable. Erik Erikson's stage theory of development gives us the mechanism. Each life stage carries a core psychological task: building identity, learning self-regulation, developing intimacy, and if that task doesn't get resolved, the personality doesn't just move on regardless. Part of it gets stuck there. Frozen in place, even as the calendar keeps advancing. And here's the twist that makes this pattern so hard to spot: emotionally stuck people are often brilliant. Quick minds, high potential, sharp insight into their own psychology in theory. They can explain emotional regulation to you in perfect detail. They just can't do it when it counts, when disappointment, conflict, or rejection actually shows up in real time. When an emotionally stuck adult hits stress or disappointment, the fragile core underneath activates a defense. And it usually shows up as one of three masks. Mask 1, the silent sulk. They're clearly upset. They will not tell you why. This is textbook psychological regression, a retreat to an infant's communication style. A baby can't explain what it needs, it can only cry and wait to be understood. The adult version of this carries the same hidden belief: if you really cared about me, you'd already know what you did wrong. Underneath the silence is fragile self-worth. Saying, "You hurt me," out loud feels like admitting weakness, like confessing dependence on someone else's approval. So silence becomes a shield and a weapon at once. It protects the ego while quietly forcing the other person into guilt. Mask 2, the overreaction. This is silence's mirror image, an explosion that's wildly out of proportion to the trigger. A changed plan. A minor disagreement. Suddenly it's a full-blown confrontation. Genuinely secure people don't need volume to feel in control. That eruption of anger is a cover story for panic. When reality stops cooperating, the fear of being a powerless victim becomes intolerable, so the mind flips the script and becomes the aggressor instead. Anger becomes armor. The rule of thumb here is almost poetic: the louder the anger on the surface, the deeper the fear of abandonment underneath it. Mask 3, the cold shutdown. This one is the quietest, and by far the hardest to spot, which is exactly what makes it so corrosive to a relationship. Instead of engaging with conflict, the person builds a wall. Total indifference. I don't care. It doesn't matter. This is a freeze response, the nervous system's emergency shutdown when emotional pain crosses a threshold it can't process. The brain disconnects from feeling entirely, not as a strategy, but as a reflex. It buys a short-term sense of safety. I don't need anyone, so no one can hurt me. But the cost is steep. A person locked behind that wall trades real connection for a fortress that's technically safe and completely empty. None of this appears out of nowhere. For psychological roots tend to show up again and again. Root 1, the fear of being ordinary. Many people stuck in this pattern were once the gifted kid, praised early and often for raw talent rather than effort. That kind of praise quietly wires the brain's reward system to crave exceptional results and constant validation. Then adulthood arrives, and adulthood runs on unglamorous repetition, hard work, small daily tasks, showing up on boring Tuesdays. To someone wired for exceptionalism, that ordinariness feels like an insult to their potential. So they opt out. Standing outside the game, untested, protects the fantasy of greatness far better than actually playing does. Root 2, the trap of infinite potential. Ask them what they could become, and the list is endless: writer, founder, artist, whatever they want. But cognitive psychology has a term for what every real decision costs: opportunity cost. Choosing one path means closing every other door. Rather than sit with an imperfect but workable reality, they retreat back into the fantasy where everything still goes exactly to plan. Root 4, pain as a permanent excuse. This one's the trickiest, because the pain is often completely real. Difficult parenting, real trauma, genuine mental health struggles, none of that is fabricated. The shift happens when those wounds stop being something to heal and start being something to hide behind. An external locus of control sets in. Everything difficult is someone else's fault, some past event's fault, anyone's fault but a present, actionable one. Because I'm like this, I can't. That stance conveniently cancels the obligation to try, because a victim, by definition, doesn't have to. Emotional maturity isn't a milestone that arrives automatically with age. It's a skill set, built through deliberate, sometimes uncomfortable practice. Here's where to start. 1. Get comfortable with boredom. Retrain the reward system. Stop chasing constant novelty and instant validation, and start finding satisfaction in repetition. Clean the same space. Follow the same schedule. Finish the task you already started, even without a burst of inspiration. Maturity isn't a feeling, it's showing up and finishing the work on a mediocre day, over and over, until consistency becomes identity. 2. Choose a door and walk through it. The fear of being trapped is, ironically, what traps people. Not choosing is still a choice, it's the choice to stay exactly where you are. Practice committing, to a field of study, to a job for a real stretch of years, to a relationship through its hard chapters. Closing 99 doors to walk through one isn't a prison sentence. It's the only mechanism that turns potential into an actual result. 3. Name the feeling out loud. Trade the mask for a sentence. Instead of going silent or erupting, pause and translate the feeling into words that start with I, not you. Not, you always ruin everything, but I feel anxious and disrespected when plans change without warning me. That single shift hands the other person something to actually respond to, and frees you from needing them to read your mind. 4. Let yourself be seen as imperfect. Drop the fortress. Maturity was never about becoming unbreakable. It's about having enough internal steadiness to look directly at your own weaknesses without flinching or attacking yourself for them. Ask for help when you need it. Let the wound be a wound, not a shield. Your past may be imperfect, but you're still the one holding the pen for what happens next. This process doesn't happen in a weekend. It's closer to learning a new language later in life, slow, occasionally humbling, and absolutely learnable. If you recognized yourself, or someone you love, in any part of this video, don't rush to judgment. Treat it like a project that's still under construction, not a verdict that's already been handed down. The moment someone chooses to take the mask off, accept the trade-offs, and own their own life, that's the real marker of growing up. Not the number of candles on the cake. Thanks for watching. This has been Obscyron Psychology. See you in the next one.